What's going on, guys? Welcome to the show. Welcome back to another episode of Action Movie Anatomy. We have been waiting, anticipating this film the way back from one of our favorite people in the world, Gavin O'Connor. Is this the best Ben Affleck performance ever? We're going to break it down for you guys and see you guys in one quick second.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Action Movie Anatomy.
What's up, man?
I used to think it'd be cool if there was a way to become a musician based off of just making guitar sounds with your mouth.
Yeah. Was that a thing you thought of
It was
when
a
you
thing
were
when I was a kid, and I thought I'd be really good at it. Now I was like 15.
Wow.
I'm going to rudely insert here because I have to. Your producer, Jeff Graham, is the biggest diehard acapella fan you'll ever meet.
Okay.
And our barbershop quartet that we contracted for a cruise ship did imitate guitars on stage.
Really?
So yes, it is possible, Ben. It is possible.
And does it sound as sweet as I hope it does?
I would say maybe even sounds better. I can show you some footage at some point.
Okay.
You'll be blown away.
Jeff Graham up in the booth. How's everyone doing? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Now I can't stop thinking about Adam Scott in Step Brothers doing the sweet
$1,500 a week for voice lessons, and this is what I get?
That's probably one of the single most brilliant pieces of movie comedy ever.
I watched that scene with my roommates maybe 50 to 100 times after the first viewing of Step Brothers.
Yes, it's absolutely immaculate. But we aren't here to talk to you guys about Step Brothers today. This is Action Movie Anatomy. We're talking today about the movie The Way Back. It opened this last weekend. It's the second film called The Way Back to come out in the last decade.
Yeah, interestingly.
Interestingly enough, there was a movie from Peter Weir. I think the last Peter Weir movie was called The Way Back, and it has like sweet actors too. It's got like Ed Harris in it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I've heard of it because of our good boy Pauly D.
Yeah.
Who PLD. Did you see he changed his Twitter handle to PLD?
He's a legend.
It's excellent.
Yeah.
He's more famous than we are.
I aspire to be PLD.
But yeah, he's of course seen it because it has Ed Harris in it. I have not seen that yet. I tried to turn on a Most Wanted Man last night.
Oh yeah, I didn't like that
It's
movie.
a stacked cast.
So slow, right?
It's slow, and it's just like one of those dramas that's just like these good actors are going to do a different accent, and it's going to be about a war or like espionage. And I'm just like, after I think 30 minutes, I was like, I'm just going to not watch this.
It felt similar to trying to watch Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy to me.
Yeah. And I need to check that one out again. I also recently watched Outbreak, of course.
It's a good one, yeah. Well, that's probably like the most watched movie on Netflix right now.
It is. It is.
It's pretty funny. Anyway, guys, this is Action Movie Anatomy. We talk action movies on this show. Those movies adhere to 4 basic rules. I won't explain them today because the movie we're covering fits none of them.
None.
And it's not even a movie that we're covering for any reason other than exactly the people involved, and that's why we chose it. This is not an action movie. This is The Way Back. It's a story of a down-and-out alcoholic who becomes a basketball coach of his former the team that he was a star on, and that's kind of his journey back to his recovery or his attempt for recovery as he coaches this team.
It's barely even a sports movie.
Yeah.
It's not a sports movie. It's a movie with sports in it.
It's like combining 2 different ideas for movies into one, and we will spoil the movie for you guys, so if you haven't seen it yet, be sure to go watch it and come back because we're going to talk to you. But the big thing is that you don't actually get the big triumphant sports ending, which is actually the boldest choice the movie makes.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the reason why, and we'll get into it a little bit later on, is that this movie deals with alcoholism in a more real way than most movies that deal with alcoholism do. You know, and even in Leaving Las Vegas, because that movie is old, it's from the 90s. What is it, 95? Mm-hmm. It's one of those where it's a little Hollywoodized, and it's Nick Cage, so it's a little big, and it's like, it doesn't make being an alcoholic look exciting, but you're kind of like, look at all these fun ups and downs, and he's wild, and this is just like, this is sad. You are sad. You are a sad man.
It's really, really sad. It's tough to watch. Jeff, I do see we've got a timer up on the screen. I just want to make sure that's not the actual time we're working with here. Okay, good. Just making sure. Great. So yes, it's definitely a sad portrayal of alcoholism. A couple shout outs really quickly to start the show off. We're going to start by shouting out patrons in the Action Army, Helen Ledwith and John Winward, or JJ Winward. That's a big salute to y'all. Thank you so much. Go check out patreon.com/Team Action if you want all of the sweet updates. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the show. And we had a super chat to start the show.
We did.
From Josh Ryan Sports. Josh Ryan, who's a legend in the Action Army.
Yeah, he says AMAQ for you. Mount Rushmore of movie coaches, ? Underrated Gary Gaines from Friday Night Lights. Also, peak Affleck equals the audio commentary for Armageddon. #legend. Do you want to answer that question now, or do you want to get into it a little bit later on? I'm just glad we acknowledged it.
Yeah, I'm glad we acknowledged it. We can talk sports coaches a little later. I mean,
Okay,
we just got the super chat right now, so obviously I don't have a list prepared, but I do agree that Gary Gaines is sweet in Friday Night Lights.
He's a good one.
You have a lot of the most famous sports movies. The concept of a great sports movie is really interesting because, like, the original template for, like, the big one is Rocky, and then you have all these other ones that over the years have been all these movies that are, like, very kid friendly. So you have, like, they're all, like, you know, all these movies that came out when we were in high school and, like, middle school, like Coach Carter and We Are Marshall and, like,
Yep.
they're right, like, a lot of those movies
There was something about, like, the idea of, like, a coach and a team that people loved.
Glory Road. I mean, but I don't even think it was just our time. I think honestly that's every decade has that.
Yeah, it almost feels like this decade, or like the more recent movies that have been coming out, there's a lot less traditional sports movies, right? Like, I guess the one that pops in my head most recently is Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah, it's a sports movie.
It's a sports movie, but it's not the traditional sports movie, right?
No, I mean,
you know, you got the guy that, I mean, spoiler alert, close your ears. You know, you got the guy that dies.
Yeah.
He's the lead guy. That's not the way sports movies work.
I mean, and again, talking about sports movies, our favorite film, or my favorite film of all time at least, is Warrior, which is Gavin O'Connor, same director as this film, which is why we were so excited for this. He takes a very traditional sports movie formula in that movie. I mean, that movie feels a lot more like a traditional sports story. And it works, though. And that's the really interesting thing about this movie, is that as you're watching and it's getting into the second half, you're kind of like, how's this going to work?
You're like, is this going to happen or isn't this going to happen? Like, are they going to do it or not?
Because when the big moment happens, when they throw him out, there's this moment where you're like, is he going to somehow, like, there's no way they're going to let him coach. What's he
he can't, like, rally and show up and try to coach him anyway. That's illegal.
Is he going to sit in the audience or something and, like, salute them or something? But even then, like, that doesn't feel authentic.
No.
You know, and they obviously avoid it by making the choice they make with this movie, which is why this movie has this kind of ambiguous ending. It's kind of just a bleak ending. It's fine.
Yeah, it's bleak, but I think the way that they actually handle the issue is so correct, right? Because anyone that's dealt with alcoholism or any sort of addiction knows that it's not just like one good thing happens in your life and you turn it around.
No.
You know, it's like that's so not real. And I think that if this was a movie that was made in the early 2000s and 100% of it was made in the 90s, that's what would have happened. He would have gotten it together. There would have been one more weird outburst, or, like, you know, he wouldn't have gotten fired, but he would have been able to fight his way back. Then they would have went on to win the state championship, and he would no longer be an alcoholic.
Right.
And then him and his ex-wife would get back together.
That's how it would end.
That's how it would end.
I mean, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong here, Coach Gordon Bombay was an alcoholic in Mighty Ducks. Isn't that right?
I can't remember if Bombay was an alcoholic, but I do remember he had, like, issues with something. I can't remember what it was.
I think he must have been a drunk. What else would it have been? They're not going to put. He's not going to be a heroin addict or
no, I don't
coke
think it was
or something,
that.
or pills. It's got to be drunk. He's got to be a drunk. That's the only thing I can think of at that time period.
Yeah. Either way, he's coming back. Coach Bombay is back.
Coach Bombay is back. So anyway, guys, we are going to be talking all of the ins and outs, the ups and downs of the way back today. Thanks to everybody watching. If you want to follow along with what we're doing here, follow me on Twitter at Ben Bateman Media.
You guys can find me at Andrew Guy. You can find the show at Team Action Show. And J-Lo, was he an alcoholic? No? J-Lo?
J-Lo.
I'm trying to see if I can read it. It doesn't say that he was an alcoholic here much.
See, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I'm, like, looking up all these articles. Either way, it's the idea of, you know, putting a coach in this, because you know, a lot of the other times with coaches in these other movies, like, for instance, remember the Titans? That's one of my favorite coaches. Like, they're not really that flawed.
No.
They're usually going up against the system or going up against something unbeatable, you know, and whereas this one is you're just like, the wheels are going to fall off soon for you or for them or for both.
And I mean, and like often if the...
Sorry, guys. He was.
He was?
Okay,
yes, great.
Yes. And his job was to do 500 hours of community service by
That's
coaching
what
the
it...
local.
Yes, now I remember.
So he was in a drunk driving accident, and that's what he had to do, 500 hours of community service.
Thank you, J-Lo.
Thanks, J-Lo.
So good to hear you in the booth.
So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about all of these things as we get into the show today. Coming up, we're going to be talking about our favorite lines, thesis statements, fist bump moments, some of the most real portrayals of alcoholism in film. And I think let's get into the first thing on the show, which is thesis statement. This is your biggest, boldest feeling about the movie. It's rooted in hyperbole almost, the greatest, the first, the only. We don't like to go with really soft sort of just opinions. It should be, this is like the statement you'd make about the movie at a party almost.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can jump in first.
Okay.
And I think we've already been alluding to it because this feels very true. This is the realest portrayal of alcoholism ever on film. It is so quietly, so subtle, so authentic.
Yeah.
and as somebody who has gone up and down with the amounts that I've drank in my life, I recognize, not necessarily in myself, but in a lot of my friends, just who drink a little too much, a lot of the tendencies he has in this movie. Like, you see them. It's not like... It's not like the kind of thing like you mentioned with Leaving Las Vegas where it's like crazy and big.
Like, I'm gonna go buy a shopping cart's worth of alcohol.
No, it's also not the kind of thing where when he's at home and he's freezering the beer and he's doing the whole thing.
I know.
You know, I mean, it was a little crazy that he drinks like 40 beers. That's like...
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's real. I've never drank 40 beers in my life. That's a little like...
a lot of beers.
But the thing is, he's so functional for the most part. He's... Right? He's...
Yep.
But a lot of
because like early on, you know, it shows him like at one point like he fills up his coffee tin with gin again, and then he goes to his construction job. You're like, oh no, here we go. He's gonna drop something, or someone's gonna get injured, or you're like, no, because that's not. This is a movie, but it's not that type of movie.
Right. Well, also because like look, every stigma that is associated with people who drink too much, they're true at their worst, right? So that's the point, right? So you tell people not to drive drunk because. Not because if you drive drunk, you're going to crash your car the first time you get in it. If you drive drunk and you are comfortable doing that, you eventually will hurt yourself or someone else. That will happen.
Yeah.
That's going to happen in your life. So don't do it. It's illegal, right? Like that's the truth. And everything that goes along with alcoholism is, like, we worked in bars for years together. And so you spend time with people and they don't come in and act like assholes every time.
No, and that's what I thought was so interesting about the bar relationship that he had in this movie is that, you know, everyone knows his name. He's got Doc, right? This guy that makes sure he gets home safe every single night, doesn't let him drive. You know, he leaves his truck there overnight every single night, and he gets stumbled down drunk every single night. And working in a bar, you look at that, and this is not Hollywoodized.
No.
That is real. There is a person, maybe they don't get stumbled down drunk every single night.
Yeah.
But you and I used to work in bars. We saw people that went from being very successful, and we saw the slow deterioration of their life and their career. They'd stop coming in dressed as nice. They'd look a little bit less cleaned up. All of a sudden, they weren't driving their car anymore. All of a sudden, they were asking people to buy them drinks. Like, it's just a crazy thing to watch happen. And what they do in this movie is it's so real, and that's what makes it so hard to watch, is that, like, Gavin does this incredible job with subtlety in this movie where he doesn't have to try that hard to make it just look real.
Yeah.
And he does it perfectly. And I think I'm going to hop in with my thesis. It started with thinking that this is the best role or the best performance that Ben Affleck has ever given. I think it probably is.
I think so, yeah.
I really do, you know. He's definitely done some good stuff in his career, but this role felt like wow, he really disappeared into this. That being said, this movie will most likely just be forgotten. It's unfortunate that it will.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that much greatness happened in it. I called you yesterday and I was like, I think I'd give it like a 7.5. Yeah, that's solid. But then I texted you and I was like, you know, if this wasn't such a great performance by Ben Affleck, this movie would probably have just been completely forgotten. Say if this was another good performance by Joaquin, or like Christian Bale, this movie would have just not. It would have just gone and came and gone. Like, yeah, they were like, oh yeah, it was a really good performance by Bale. Yeah, they were looking on alcoholism. That's it. But the fact that it's Ben Affleck, someone who is a superstar A-lister and has been for 20 plus years, finally turning in a role that's like, holy crap.
Well, and it also parallels his life so much.
And it parallels his life. At the same time the article came out that everyone read.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty fascinating. Like, I think this movie will live on just because it's Ben Affleck's best performance.
And I think it's a pretty great performance. I think it's unlikely that this is going to get Oscar attention because it's so early in the year, but it is possible. I mean, he is Ben Affleck, so it could be a situation where everybody's kind of looking at each other later in the year, and it's like, well, you know what? It's the first time Affleck's ever turned in a performance that was like this, and we need to honor this, you know, because Hollywood likes to do that, and it's totally conceivable they would. So I don't know that it'll happen necessarily. Usually by the end of the year, there's like 25 people that deserve the nomination. And it's almost always the big movies towards the end of the year.
Towards the end of the year, yeah. I'd be pretty surprised if it got nominated. I wouldn't be upset because I think he does turn in a really good role or performance.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, leave yours in the chat here if anybody has any thoughts on your favorite, your thesis statement about the film. We're going to move on to Fist Pump Moment. And it's interesting.
I'm curious what yours is.
Well, it's interesting because it's a sports movie. So, right. So Fist Pump Moment's that moment something happens in the movie. You kind of look around. You're like, yes. This is awesome. I get to watch the rest of the movie. You just get hyped. And
You
sports
like
movies
feel the energy in the theater, in the room, kind of just like shift. Like everyone's like, yeah.
Yeah, and sports movies tend to have a lot of them. Like that's you know they really do. And this movie's not really a sports movie, right? It's only a little bit of a sports movie, so you don't get as many of those big sports fist pumps.
Yeah, and I definitely, mine is a sports fist pump. It 100% is, and I'll just hop in with mine. You know, they're losing over and over and over, no matter what they do. And Affleck is, you know, he's not butting heads with the assistant coach and the pastor, you know, but he's he's just a little too much, a little too aggressive. But it's at the very end of the first game that they win.
Yeah.
When he starts to draw up the play and they kind of pre-roll the play and show him kind of doing it. I don't know why, because I knew it was going to happen. We all knew it was going to happen, and we knew the music was going to come in, and we knew he was going to hit the three. But the moment that the play comes through, the dude makes the right decision, and he hits the three from the corner, and they win, I couldn't help but just do like a little...
100%. That's also mine.
Yeah.
The ending is great. The second game, the other big game they win. But that moment is the one that feels like it's happening.
It's happening.
It's happening.
Finally, he's breaking through.
Yeah.
I loved that moment. Also, Affleck having the conversation with Brandon, the lead, the lead kid, about 100 times out of 100, I want you taking that shot.
Yeah.
Even if you miss, like I think that's a great thing to put in there. Or like that's one of the things you hear Jordan talk about, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've missed however many times in my career, but the reason I win is because, all that thing.
Yeah.
I loved that. I thought it was just one of those Gavin moments.
Yeah,
Really
he obviously he's great with sports movies, and he loves those moments. Yeah, I think those moments are great. Another one that actually really worked for me was when he drives up to the bar, and he's sitting in the car.
Oh, yeah.
And then he drives away.
I was for sure he was still going to go in that time.
Me too.
Yeah.
And the fact that he doesn't in that moment, it's not because you think he's cured. It's because he's found like the light or the spark that's like encouraging him to be better.
Just enough to make you not drink that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that was pretty impressive.
The other thing that I thought was really good, or well written, I should say, was when Affleck is talking to his friend, the dad of the other sick child. And he's like, you remember him, right? You remember Jack, right?
Yeah.
He was Michael's dad. You remember Michael? There was so many things. There was 4 pages of dialogue covered in 3 sentences.
Yeah.
And like, that's something that I learned from the show that I used to do with Jeff and here on Popcorn Talk, was like, writers would talk about, you get that first draft out and you realize that you've said something in 4 pages, 3 pages that you could do in just a couple lines. And like the amount of ground that they covered, and they finally subtly slip it in. You want to know, because you want to know why he drinks so much. You want to know what happened with him and his wife. And he says in the beginning, no, I don't have any kids. So you're like, so you're just a miserable drunk?
Yeah.
And then when they finally say it, it's done so well. I kind of had like a filmmaker's fist pump where I was like, good job, Gavin. Dude, that's a great line.
I couldn't agree more. And that's like a really sad moment too, when you start to realize the relationship, and then you're like, oh no, like this is a family from being in the hospital.
Yeah.
That's what happened. And you're here with your wife because it's like a solidarity move. You like still kind of share this connection. And if it was anything else, you and your ex-wife
separated, estranged,
probably wouldn't go to another kid's birthday party of family friends together.
No,
probably not. But and because you're also like, she's seeing someone. Why is she not taking him? Because she says, "Do you want to go together?" And you're like, "Who is this? What's happening?" And then when they're there, you definitely have it. You're like, "Oh, I see.
Yeah,
this is so sad.
This is so horrible."
And then when he goes to the hospital with her when it happens, and before he relapses, that's the other, like, and that's not a fist pump because it's not happy. It's a fist pump in how real it feels when it's happening.
Yep.
He's I can't be here.
And I can't deal with this.
He drives straight to the bar. And the way that he drives straight to the bar, he just sits down.
And the bar's not like it. I wasn't sure if they were going to do the whole like bar's not open yet thing, but Jackie, you can hang out, like that type of thing. They don't do it. They just show that he gets there and no one else is there. The bartender's not even there in that shot. He's just in the bar by himself early in the day, right?
Like 10 in the morning, maybe.
And he's there all day long. And that's like, you're just like, oh man, this is gonna get real bad.
Yep.
Just taking shots, drinking beers all day long.
So here's my question. they don't really clearly establish in the movie when he is and isn't drinking. That's like one of the things that they kind of stay away from. And it's really interesting because he's not proudly saying he's sober to anyone. He doesn't. There's no moment when he's like, "Sister," is like, "I'm proud of you." Like that doesn't happen, right? Yeah. And he's still puffy kind of throughout the whole movie. He doesn't. It's not like he gets. You can see he's a little skinnier at one point. I think.
Yeah.
Right. And
I think it's when they're going to the birthday party.
Yeah.
I think is when you can see it.
But I was trying to decide: is he supposed to be sober through this whole period, or is he supposed to be keeping it together?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is he supposed to be sober through the whole period, or do you think he's just supposed to be keeping it together?
I think he's keeping it together because I think there's references to it and there's moments and like the coach talks about the assistant coach is like there's beers. His lying in this movie when he's caught is so good. I just had an old buddy stop. What? You have a hard time. You're like,
oh, it's like so uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's real gross. It's real gross, and they don't even show that. And then the idea that he's just walking around with his coffee cup filled with gin all day is, I think it feels like in the middle of the movie, he probably gets it under wraps a little bit. Like you talk about, the spark, right?
But you think he's still drinking throughout?
I think he's probably still drinking throughout.
Yeah.
I don't think that he just stops.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what I was trying to figure out was like a guy that drinks the way he drinks in this movie at his worst is not somebody that it feels like is able to have 3 or 4 drinks in a day if he's just comfortable drinking all day. So that's what I was trying to decide. Like, is he just not drinking?
Yeah, it's like the line that you told me about in Flight.
Yeah.
Right? Where he's like, she's like, I've never known you to have a glass or 2 of wine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to figure that out. It's interesting that they don't actually acknowledge it. They never point it out. It's got to be intentional.
Yeah, and they don't. The other thing that I noticed early on in the movie is that they don't talk about his dad's alcoholism much, or if that was a thing.
Yeah.
But then when you see him with his sister and he's late to Thanksgiving and they're standing there late at night.
Yeah.
I think it's a clear choice that Gavin made by having her pour herself a very large glass of wine.
Yeah.
With the carafe. What are they called?
The decanter.
Decanter right next to it. And they don't talk about it. They don't allude to her drinking too much or not having an issue. But it's just like you wonder if that's a quick nod to being like it is hereditary or it can be.
Right. Like right. Like where it's sort of like she's concerned for him because how good is the scene early on when they're in the kitchen
and he loses it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's like there are a couple beats in this movie that it hits where you're like, this is actually like again we keep saying it. This is like what it's really like.
Yeah.
And like that's one of those moments where it's like. He doesn't want to hear it. He knows it's an issue. He doesn't want to hear it. Yep. She knows that she's going to like
piss him off probably.
She knows it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And she's almost looking for it, right? She can't sit. It's like, and the way it's just like, yeah, it's intense.
And also I do love the choice that when he hits the beer, you can hear it's empty, right? Like they were there for like a minute or 2.
Yeah.
He drank the whole thing like instantly. Yeah. There's so much great subtlety in this, which. So we talk about how much all the things we love about this movie, but there are things that miss a little for me.
Yeah.
I think that the story about him just being like, I quit playing basketball because fuck my dad.
Yeah.
Is like a little interesting. I don't know if it needed to be elaborated on or not or extended or whatever the word I'm looking for. I was medium on that, and then also like. I guess he can't really have that many great relationships, right? Because he's a freaking alcoholic.
Yeah.
So that's another big part of it. It felt like towards the end of the movie there wasn't a lot to latch onto other than just him and his struggle. But I guess that's really all this movie is, right? Like this isn't a sports movie. People like maybe I was still looking for like that sports moment, and you kind of get it for a minute, but then because I remember you telling me you're like this movie kind of takes not a left turn, but it has a very interesting ending.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the ending?
In retrospect, after watching it and thinking about it more and more, I think it's like pretty brilliant. I think it's like one of the most interesting and unique things about the movie. I think this movie's actually pretty great. I think it's just a movie that surprises you when you watch it, and it feels like the sports beats in the movie that it hits. Most of them are super cliche.
Yeah.
Right. But like I felt, we just had one of our big supporters, Alex McFarland, Commander in Chief, literally tweeted us the other day.
She's in the chat blowing up right now.
Yeah, and she was like, I just watched Warrior. And had some great moments, didn't love it, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is, I remember watching Warrior the first time, and that was kind of my opinion of Warrior the first time I watched it.
Right.
Was like, this movie was a great guilty pleasure. It had these great moments, but it's not a great movie. It's only in watching it like 50 times that I'm just like, this movie's like immaculate.
Every moment is wonderful.
But if you go and deconstruct pieces of Warrior, you can still just be like, The kids are not that good of actors for the most part. Like a lot of their stuff with the principal's not great. A lot of that stuff feels kind of corny.
Yeah.
There's definitely corny moments in that movie where you're like, this is, I'm not watching Gone with the Wind here. Like,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it all weaves together to create like something perfect. And that's kind of the way I'm viewing this movie too, is that the beats that it hits that feel kind of cliche, I'm like willing to overlook because I don't know how else to do it. I don't know what else you're supposed to do with those sports moments.
Yeah, and I don't think you're supposed to do anything. I think he did exactly what you're supposed to do in giving you just enough relief from what's going on throughout the rest of the movie. There is still some joy in this film, and like I was really unsure if he was going to hit the game-winning shot. I really didn't know if they were going to give it to him or not, and if that was going to be his moment to learn. Like, I'm the best, so I need to do this, but it's not always going to work out.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it did.
I agree.
It feels correct.
Would have been too bleak otherwise.
Yeah, and to lose to that jackass twice. Who is he again? I can't remember his name. He's so good.
I looked him up the other day. So you know who he looks just like, but I don't think he is? He looks like the guy that plays Glenn Guglia in The Wedding Singer.
Yeah, he does. He does look like that guy.
I don't think it's him, though.
And he also looks like a dude from, not Pedro Pascal, but he looks like another dude from a TV show I've seen recently. I need to figure out his name because it's driving me crazy.
He's a real dickbag. And when Affleck starts like winning in the second game, it's so great how frustrated he's getting.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that I kind of could tell. You could kind of tell there was a big turn coming at the end of the movie that was unexpected when they won that game, because what you realize is that's the team. So the big challenge is that team, and if they're beating that team 20 minutes before the movie's over, they.
Well, and I hadn't looked at. Oh, dude, I totally pulled a Duralde. Would you sit down, please?
Did you really?
Yeah, but not like that. I'll be honest. I got to the theater and I was one of the first people there.
Yeah.
Even though the movie was about to start in like 5 minutes, I was very late.
Yeah.
And that theater was mostly empty, and there was what looked like a homeless dude sitting right next to me.
Huh.
And I was like, how did this happen? Like, I bought tickets like 20 minutes ago, and there was no one here.
Huh.
But I didn't say anything, and I was fine with it. And then the whole time, I'm just like waiting for the movie to start so I can move a seat over. Because also with what's going on with the coronavirus and all that, I'm just like, if I don't need to sit right next to someone I don't know in a movie theater, why would I?
Yep.
So despite, nothing, he was totally fine, nice dude. I actually enjoyed sitting next to him because he was like, there's a couple moments where he was like, like you could hear him really responding and reacting to things that were happening. Like the same way that my brain was doing. I just didn't do vocally. Like in a scene that was hitting home about alcoholism, you look at it and you're just like, damn. And I could hear this dude having all these moments, which was really fascinating. And actually I enjoyed sitting next to him. That being said, on the other side of me was a mother-daughter that walked in 5 minutes after the movie started. They had tons of food that were not from the theater, and the girl would not get off her phone. It was just right next to me, bright as hell. And after the third time she brought it out within the first 5 minutes, I go, yo, can you not, please? Like, no one else in this room is on their phone.
Yeah.
And that's all. That was it.
She didn't
do it again.
That's good.
I was like, do I do this? But I was like, yeah. Like,
that's bad.
That's bad. Like, she did it once, and she was on it for like a minute. Like a minute straight. And I was like, okay, maybe she's like telling her friends that she's going into a movie, and she has to tell all of them. I was like, I'm going to give her a chance. But then like 3 or 4 times within the first 10, I was like, no, this is not happening.
Yeah. I guess you could have moved seats if you wanted to avoid saying it.
I looked around. There's no, it was full. That was the other thing. I was shocked. It was Tuesday at 5 p.m. It was packed.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wild.
It was weird.
Interesting. Yeah. So anyway, guys, we are gonna get into star profiles, talk about the leads in this film for just a minute here. So Ben Affleck, his last films that he did before this, he did the film The Last Thing He Wanted, which I believe is it's like the political espionage one with Anne Hathaway that just came out, right?
It's supposed to be like god awful.
Yeah. Jay and Silent Bob reboot 2019, which she is playing one of a couple characters. I actually haven't seen it yet.
I haven't either.
And then Triple Frontier in 2019, which this is all so. Affleck is now sober, right? He relapsed like a year and change ago. But the understanding is that basically since 2016 or 15 or so, he's mostly been doing pretty well. He just had one pretty public relapse.
Yeah.
But I do think that some of these movies, Triple Frontier especially, is one that came out during the period that he was did not have it together. Because I think he's in that movie. I'm pretty sure I've only watched 25 minutes of it. But
same.
He's kind of dad bod in that movie. He definitely looks like a drunk in that movie.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I really want to figure out with this movie is did they do makeup? Did they like have him on a special like really high sodium diet so that he
Yeah.
looked super bloated? Because he does look very bloated throughout this
That'd be
movie.
so uncomfortable.
I know, right? Like having to show up to set every day, like knowing you look bad
Ugh.
and like them making you look bad.
Yeah.
But
and bad in a way that is like familiar to you. Because,
yeah,
like,
because he's just dealt with it.
yeah.
Yeah, I do have to say, there was numerous times throughout the movie where I was just looking at it, I was like, damn, dude, this is like, well done. Well done, whoever did this, because you guys all went for it, and it really is very believable.
Agreed. On the other side of things, we've got Janina Gavankar. She does White Orchid in 2018, Blind Spotting in 2018, and The Vanishing of Sydney Hall in 2017.
She's beautiful.
Yeah, gorgeous.
She's absolutely stunning.
She's funny. It's funny because she's pretty well known, I'm pretty sure, for True Blood and one other show, or like her the big things. But I always remember her as Shiva from The League.
Okay, good. Yeah, me too. Shiva. Yes, I was like, why do I know you so well? Shiva.
Yeah.
I love that. I
Shiva.
love The League.
Me too. It's like there's like shows that I feel like maybe you're the right age.
Yeah.
Entourage was like that when I was in high school. The League was perfectly like that in like early 20s. But yeah, she's definitely. I mean, she's getting bigger and bigger.
And I think she does a great job in this movie.
Yeah.
I think she does just exactly enough. And I have to say, those fights that he had are like not even fights. The outbursts that Affleck have.
Yeah.
Like, did you fucking some rich dude now?
Yeah.
And then it's just silent. And then he's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And she just leaves. And you're just like, oh, God.
Well, also, how good is that scene when he's in rehab and she comes and he's just like, I ruined our marriage.
Yeah.
That scene. And I heard
I failed him because I didn't take care of his mother. Like, oh.
I cried multiple times watching this movie. That was definitely one of the hardest ones. And I've heard in the article that, Affleck, that was written about this, that a lot of the stuff in this movie is like, it's very therapeutic for him, and it's all very real.
Yeah.
He says in the article that the greatest regret of his life is destroying his marriage with Jennifer Garner. And so that line in the movie is just basically apologizing to Jennifer Garner, I think, which is like, that's pretty tough. That's pretty tough.
Yeah, and Gavin himself said, he talked to New York Times as well, and he was like, he just had a full-on breakdown after that.
Yeah.
How could you not? And it's so well acted, man. It really, God, I really wish this movie either came out later or that people could just remember, even if he doesn't win, because I don't know if he deserves to win yet, because not enough has happened this year.
Yeah.
But at least acknowledgement, because he does really do. Dude, the sequence of him calling the father and the slow deterioration of his mental capacity is so good, and I love the ritualistic thing, because that's another thing about addiction, is that there's like a ritual behind it, and that people that's like their comfort that have addictions. You see it, it's like he has this thing, right? One beer in, one beer out, double tap, like the whole thing is like it's a method for him behind the madness. So let's get into production development just a little bit here. So this was it started in June of 2018. It was announced that Gavin O'Connor and actor Ben Affleck were going to reteam for a drama titled The Has-Been, which, also in that article, they talk about how that was such a horrible idea to put a actor who's struggling on a poster that just says The Has-Been.
Yeah, no actor would want that.
No actor would want that, and I'm really glad they changed the name. Former basketball star has lost his wife and family foundation because of addiction. He attempts to regain his soul by becoming the coach of a high school basketball team at his alma mater. I did think it was cool enough, just like enough nods that they gave, like, oh, hey, Jack, good to see you back on the court. Or, no one gave him too much credit, but it was still just like, everyone knew who he was.
He was like a legend in his hometown.
Yeah. Principal photography began in October of 2018 in San Pedro in Los Angeles. It's also cool to see how much was filmed here in Los Angeles. And then, as you said, he spoke pretty candidly about how this is parallels his own life. So if you haven't read that article, definitely go read the article. It's a very, very good read. Yeah,
it's interesting to think about. I've been thinking about this recently. So remember last year when Brad Pitt came out? It was 2 years ago, maybe, and he talked about his addiction. He talked about going to AA.
I actually don't, because you've told me about this, but I do want to go and read about this, because I know that Pitt was highly influenced by Cooper to quit. Yeah,
and so you definitely hear stories about celebrities who get sober. It happens. It's pretty common actually. Yeah. And there's a lot of very successful people that are notably sober, but it's not that often that you hear them talk about the process of getting sober. Like the actual process of getting sober. I mean, Downey is pretty famous for having gone to rehab, kind of being forced into it. But I mean, Affleck talking in that article so candidly, or Brad Pitt talking about sitting in a room at AA with a bunch of strangers. Hey, I'm Brad Pitt. I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's a bizarre thought. But it also, because the thing about this movie.
Can you imagine if you went to an AA group and there's Brad Pitt in there?
Like, oh, cool, man. Hey, can I get your autograph?
Hey, man, I know this is anonymous.
Hey man, if you ever want to do an interview in the bathroom here, you can bring a camera, whatever you want.
It's not weird. It's not weird.
No, but like I think the thing that's so cool about it is that with more and more celebrities being willing to talk about this stuff, it's such a real thing. Like, do you remember being like 10 years old and the concept of something like alcoholism, like the word, what it meant to you then?
It was cool. Like, it almost seemed like it was cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was going to say it seemed like the devil. It seemed like I'll never be around that, and no one I know will ever be around that.
I think when you're young, you don't understand. Yeah, okay, let me rephrase this. So yes, true alcoholism, and like when you heard about what it was, like as a kid, it seemed like a very, very
like a serious
dangerous,
problem.
serious, really bad problem. Like your life would be ruined.
If you met an alcoholic, you'd know it. That was kind of what it seemed like.
But also, how are we not supposed to think alcohol is cool?
Yeah.
Look at James Bond.
Right.
That dude, like you and I talk regularly about, like, there's no way you can drink that much scotch and then go and fight people and then get your ass kicked and then wake up the next day and do it again. Same with Batman, same with all these things So as a kid, I heard about how bad alcohol was, but then whenever I saw it, I always thought it was like the coolest thing. And it's not like I was watching Leaving Las Vegas as a kid.
Our heroes all smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol.
Right?
That's like a thing.
It was a horrible thing to put on the young generation, especially young men at the time, of like womanizing, alcoholic, cigarette smoking, philandering. Like all this stuff was like cool in the 90s.
Super selfish. Yeah. Totally. So my point though is that when you're growing up, you think like if you met like an alcoholic, you would know what it looks like. But the reality is that you don't, because the concept of what an alcoholic is super gray. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the whole point, is you see him at his worst here, at his darkest here. But when you see somebody like a Brad Pitt or a Bradley Cooper or a Ben Affleck be like, yeah, this was a problem for me, I had to get sober, and this is how I did it, there's a good chance half the people I know struggle with addiction, even if I'm not aware of it. Because I know a lot of people that like to drink, and I know a lot of people that they're like, yeah, sometimes I drink too much. What does that mean when I'm not around, when I actually am not? What does that mean for them? I don't know.
And their actual relationship with it, yeah.
But like, it's very, 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 very real, and it's very helpful for people to be able to watch movies about this subject and then hear their like heroes talk about this as an actual like problem. Like Ben Affleck to say, hey, look, I got sober, I fell off the wagon, I'm not proud of it, I ruined my marriage, I'm still a good person, I still want to have a good life. This is what I had to do to get better. Because
and I think Gavin did a really, really smart thing here with taking something that we know he's so great at doing, which is a sports film, and then using that as kind of like the Trojan horse for carrying this alcoholic message, right? Because this movie is truly just a film about alcoholism, not about basketball. And I do like the stuff that they do with the basketball. I love the pastor who never wants him to cuss, and I love, the loudmouth kind of asshole kid that gets cut and then comes back and realizes his ways. You love the hardworking, tall white dude that's like, he's scrappy. He's a scrappy fighter, and I love all that stuff. And even the kid who's got like the 3 girlfriends and he's running conditioning, like it's all great. It's all funny and perfect, but it does feel like, I don't know if Gavin has ever had issues with alcoholism, but it definitely seems like he's someone that really, really understands it.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, obviously Nolte in Warrior, which is a good time for us to talk about Gavin. We talked about it a lot last week on the Accountant episode. Mm-hmm. He hasn't directed that many movies. Obviously this movie, Miracle, Warrior, Pride and Glory, The Accountant, those are kind of the greatest hits. But I do want to talk about really quickly 5 movies that deal with alcoholism. I think that's an interesting thing. We've already made reference to this one, Leaving Las Vegas. Another one that comes up a lot is Flight, which is one of my favorites. It's a movie that I really like. I think the movie's like very underappreciated. Yeah,
it's funny. You and I went to dinner recently with our buddies, and before you got there, for some reason, we went on like this long tangent about Flight and how much we love it.
Because I had just watched this.
Oh yeah, it's because you would just come from that. Yeah. And Flight's great. They specifically talked about that scene where he goes to grab the bottle. I thought that was the moment where Ben Affleck pulls up,
drive the car.
I thought he was gonna turn it on, turn it off, and then get out. And go in. Whereas like in Flight, they have that moment where he's like, I got it, and he doesn't, and then he grabs it and drinks the whole thing. I think another one that hit me really hard, I mean, I was bawling, was Star is Born.
Yeah,
right?
That one's tough to watch.
And again, you have someone who is so close with it, who really understands alcoholism, that's playing a role that, like, I can't imagine what that's like for him.
Yeah.
And like, both those dudes are very good at stumble down drunk, as if they've done it before.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. It's I mean, that's a great one. Leaving Las Vegas. Obviously, Warrior has an incredible scene.
We talked about Everything Must Go.
Yeah,
It's, you know, there's that's one where
that's
you look
a tough
at
one.
it's him and Rebecca Hall, I believe, and like Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell's such a great dramatic actor.
He is.
He's done it numerous times now, but in that movie, it's crazy because it's one of those moments where you're looking at someone who you just adore and always adore.
Yeah.
And you're watching, you're like, you're kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I don't really like you. And then you're like, wow, you're doing a great job. You know,
Totally,
but
man.
yeah, that movie's very good. I'm trying to think if there's any other ones that just like pop in my mind. I think those are the big ones for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely a few others. When we were talking about this last week, the idea of doing a segment on this, we came up with a few others I remember, and if they come to mind,
And it was Crazy Heart, you said?
oh, Crazy Hearts.
Oh, Ray Drill. I mean, it's not specifically alcoholism. It's like a lot of things, but like, you know, those types of movies that deal with, you know, rock stars. I think it's happened a lot. I think Rocket Man deals with some of it, but I haven't seen it. I remember
Rocket Man deals with
hearing
a lot of
about
addiction.
that.
Yeah, it deals with a lot of addiction. Crazy Heart, you mentioned, that's a big one.
Yeah.
I mean, Crazy Heart is like he's like, because they have to give you the moments. Like there's these, like, if you're gonna put this on screen, there are things you can do that are just like him pouring into a, you know, glass or whatever, but you need those moments that are like sort of shocking to stick with you. Like in Crazy Heart, he's like broken down, he has no money, he's like an old country music star. His like sideman got really famous, and now he's like aging and he hasn't made any money, he's broke. And he's like driving around in his old pickup, like with his, and he like shows up to the bar or whatever, and he's like a legend kind of, and they pair him with some house band to like play his hits. And he shows up and he's like blowing it, he's bad. The house band is all like, who, really, this is
Like,
him?
what's happening here? Yeah.
And then middle of the set, he like runs out back and he like vomits in a trash can because he's so drunk.
Ugh.
And he like goes back in, like wipes his mouth and like finishes playing the song. Like those are the things that if you're gonna put this in a movie, because people remember that stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
That sounds like a great scene, I guess is the way to put
Yeah.
it, but like it sounds like a good scene.
Yeah, Crazy Heart's good. That movie, and granted, he won the Oscar for that role, but
Yeah.
that movie doesn't get talked about very often.
No, and deservedly so. Neither does Manchester by the Sea,
Oh God,
which
yeah.
is good. But that's, you know,
a
it's a
tough one.
very interesting one.
I mean, I do think that his performance in this movie feels a little like Manchester.
It feels better,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Honestly, like it felt like Manchester. It felt like Manchester has a couple more moments where it's easier to look better as an actor, whereas
Yeah.
in this movie it's all subtle. It's nothing but subtlety. The end of this movie when he's driving and like the crash and the coming around and the stumbling, like I had my hands over my face like a horror movie during that part. I was just like, oh God, just like don't do it, don't go inside, don't park, don't drive, don't kid, like
Yeah,
so
the whole
much
thing.
of it.
I was sitting next to Scott Mance in the screening, and Mance was
He's like, this movie came out in 2020. So, great.
as he's in the car driving, Mance just he leans over me, he goes, "Make it stop, Ben, make it stop."
Yeah.
Because
Because you knew, right?
Yeah, you know what's gonna happen.
He's
I
too
mean,
happy. Girl buys him a couple shots. Shouldn't be even talking to her. Like,
It's a disaster. The whole thing
Yeah.
is falling apart. Yeah, it's really it's really sad.
what an interesting episode of AMA.
Yeah.
How about a great one, Bad Santa? There we go. We can leave.
That's a fun one.
alcoholic
That's a
one.
fun alcoholic movie. Anyway, so guys, those are some of our favorites about alcoholism. Let's talk about let's talk about Warner Brothers studio that made this movie.
Yeah, so the movie cost about $250,000. Let's try that again. $25 million to make. It was released in March of this year. It's grossed so far $8.8 million domestic and just under $1 million foreign, which is it speaks volumes to what's happening with the coronavirus all around the world, and like the fact that international movies are not even making $1 million when they star Ben Affleck. It's pretty crazy. It's totally, or in its total run, it's made $9.5 million, and it opened up number 3rd last weekend. It's got a 7.2 on IMDb, 85% on the tomato meter, and an 84 by audience, which I think it's all good. I think I'm okay with all that.
Number 3rd, eh?
Number 3rd, is that what I said?
Yeah.
Number 3. It opened up number 3rd. I don't know what the other 2 were, but yeah, it opened up number 3.
I do think this is
last
an interesting
weekend.
sort of moment, just because you mentioned it a second ago. We can't pretend it's not happening. The coronavirus thing is real. It's everyone's talking about it. This is, the symptoms and everything that's being discussed. Like, this is something that's going to be here for a minute. It's the world's going to come around on it. We're going to be okay. but it's definitely a scary moment we're all in.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to see what's happening to industry as it's happening, because you do wonder. We're seeing all these movies get pushed back right now, right? Like I'm gonna go screen My Spy tonight, which is the Dave Bautista movie.
Right, and it doesn't come out now.
It was supposed to come out last September, got pushed to this spring because they didn't want to release it at the same time as Stuber. And I got an email that was like, "Hey, by the way, we've just pushed the release of this movie another month." And I have to think that's because of coronavirus.
Yeah.
The same can be said for obviously No Time to Die. The new James Bond movie was pushed 6 months. You're gonna see, I think, studios panic and push their releases because you look at a movie like this, The Way Back. This movie is going to be considered a total flop because it's not going to make any money.
Yep.
Whether it would have made money if the economy was healthy and we weren't dealing with the coronavirus, I don't know. But when we look back in 5 years at this movie, did it succeed or not? It's going to be in this like nexus of films that all get released in this time period, a lot of which are going to tank.
Yeah,
and it's crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the other movie that opened this last weekend was Onward, and Onward only made $12 million, right? Like that's, or I mean, $12 million on its opening day.
Yeah.
Or no, that's in total. Yeah, that's in total to date. It's just under $13 million, and that's a Pixar movie.
That's
right?
crazy.
That's massive. It's crazy. And The Invisible Man beats out The Way Back, which makes sense. People were really raving about The Invisible Man.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a movie that I think will. I can't wait to look back on this year in 5 years and talk about all the crazy shit that's happened. The fact now that South by Southwest and E3 have been canceled, rodeos are being canceled in Texas.
Comic-Con's going to get canceled.
It seems impossible for it not to.
Every single public event that has like a large number of people feels like it's going to get canceled. I think it's interesting too. Like I'm going to screen stuff in theaters and you're around like 30, 50, 100 people. Like I guess like you in your life, that's just going to happen right now. So it's sort of unavoidable. Like you could not go to places that have people in them, but like go to a restaurant, go to a coffee shop, go anywhere. Unless you're just going to hide in your house, you kind of have to. But if you're talking about going somewhere and bringing hundreds of thousands of people to one area right now, I just don't think you can't do it. You should not be doing that. Should not be. Did you see the Golden State Warriors? Did you see the announcement?
Yeah, they're playing home games with no one there.
They're playing home games with no one in the arena.
Which is crazy because LeBron was also saying, he's like, if there's not fans, I'm not going to play because that's why I play the game, which is very interesting that he would say that.
He said that?
He said that, which I think is flawed.
What the hell is that about?
Right?
It doesn't make any sense.
No. I mean, I guess at this point now with how old he is, but yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Like you should, yeah. I don't know, man. The whole thing is crazy. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so that's the financials of the movie. It's going to be interesting to see. The reviews are pretty strong. Let's talk favorite line.
Yeah, favorite line. So it's always tough, and especially after me calling out this girl next to me, there was no way I was going to bring out my phone to write down a favorite line. But
look at her. It's okay.
It's okay. It's my favorite line. I'm pretty positive. I couldn't remember, but I'm pretty positive now. During the show, I remembered he's like, "Don't underestimate the impact that you can have on these young men."
Yeah.
And that was like, it's just a good line, right? Because there's still moments to this day where I can think about like my old coaches in high school and things that they said to me, and like moments where I was like, "That guy was an asshole," or moments where I was like, man, I'll never forget when he said this thing.
Yeah.
And that's one of those lines that I think is great because also he doesn't fix it. He doesn't get better. You're waiting for it the whole time, right? You're waiting for that one game where he's like, you chicken crap or whatever, but it doesn't happen. Never happens. But yeah, I love that line.
I think for me, it's one of the lines from the trailer, actually, the second trailer, which was not as good. Which we should talk in a second about why we think the promotion of this movie was what it was.
Yeah,
I think it's one of the most interesting parts about the whole movie. But the second trailer, he has that line that he says to Brandon, where he's like, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, and he nods, and he's like, no, don't just nod, I want to hear you say it.
Yeah,
because that's like, I love that when he gets so fired up as a coach, he's like, I don't care what you think works for you, we're doing it my way. I'm the coach. So if I'm here, we're going to do it my way. You're going to respond to me. You don't get to just nod. You're the star player. I'm the coach. Say, yes, I can do it.
And that's another thing that they show about alcoholism. You and I can attest to this from working in a bar. You meet these people when they're at their best, and they're great.
Yeah.
They're inspiring. They're interesting. They're funny. They're all the things.
Yeah.
But then when that drug takes over and you see it start to decline, then it's him at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And we haven't talked about it a lot, but the scene when he begs for his job back, that whole thing is almost a favorite line because it's so well written.
Yeah.
And it's so well acted. Like, he does such a good job in that scene.
And he's like, just dumped the gin into the thing.
You
tossed
know
it
the
in
room
bag.
reeks. Yeah.
And you know that, like, It's just so sad.
I could smell it on you. He's like, you lied to me this morning.
Yeah.
I could smell it on you. The boys could smell it on you. And that's when he stops.
Yeah.
He's like, what? He's like, that's bullshit. And that's like, okay, here it is. Yep, you don't have any arguments, so you're just going to be mad now.
He's just getting angry. What do you? And he says, "Who's going to coach the team? You?
You're a fucking math teacher."
Yeah, you know.
What do you think about this movie being R? It needed to be R, right?
Yeah. Well, he has to swear constantly.
Well, right. So that's the thing, right? That's the only thing that makes it R is the language.
Yeah, I mean, there's no graphic, there's no nudity, there's no
And there's no like graphic violence from him crashing, and alcoholism I think can still be shown in the PG-13 movie.
I think that it'd be hard pressed to make this movie like if he didn't do the swearing thing.
Yeah.
If he like got it together pretty quickly, I don't think this movie really should be seen by 13-year-old kids who think they're watching Hoosiers.
Totally.
I think that's the misnomer of what this movie is like people are like, oh, it's like Dennis Hopper and Hoosiers, and it's like kinda, except like they win, and it's like,
Wait, you mean Hackman?
what?
Hackman, the coach?
Isn't Hopper the alcoholic assistant coach?
Oh yeah, maybe.
All right, I think Hackman's the guy. He's the new coach that comes in, but I think Hopper's the guy.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've seen it. I'm pretty sure, but yeah, and like, you know, that's a very like Disney version sort of. This is dark. This is really dark. He gets fired. He doesn't get to come back to the team.
Yeah, and it's justifiable, like completely.
Totally.
So moving on to AMA question here, we got a great question here from Ferris Muthana, and then we're also going to get back to Josh Ryan's. It says, Ferris Muthana writes, I have a question. Does the fact that Gavin O'Connor uses the avenue of sports to tell a wider message, like in Miracle and Warrior, and now The Way Back, what other sports should he use to tackle a broad issue? That's a great question.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I think it'd be cool to see Gavin do a baseball movie.
Yeah, I mean, baseball is like the classic, right?
Well, yeah, also because there's something about baseball now in their culture right now where it's like it's still America's oldest sort of like classic pastime, but all those famous baseball movies, the ones that were really, really big, are from the 80s and 90s. Even Moneyball, which is a great movie, is from a decade ago. And that's like the last great baseball movie. So I would love to see Gavin come in and tackle some of those like classic sort of American ideals while also acknowledging that this is a dying sport. It's still making money, but it's dying in the sense that like young people don't care. This is not something that's exciting, and you have a lot of old dinosaurs who are holding on to it. And I think there would be probably an interesting thing about like sort of age and culture that he could make a pretty interesting statement about that.
If they were able to make a cool, sexy enough like The Big Short style movie about what just happened with the Astros in baseball,
Yeah.
I don't think Gavin would be the right guy for it, but something like that I think could maybe bring some life back into baseball. I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
I think baseball is like a very interesting one. The other one though is I thought about it, but because Ford Ferrari just came out, but I've read articles about NASCAR drivers having issues with alcoholism.
Oh, interesting.
I'm pretty positive, and I thought that could be interesting, even though I have no interest in NASCAR at all.
Yeah.
I think that could be another interesting way to take a look, or a deeper dive into some serious issues.
Yeah.
And then the other one we have is from Josh Ryan, which is basically about the Mount Rushmore of coaches. We just mentioned Gene Hackman from Hoosiers. We mentioned Coach Boone, who I love from Remember the Titans. I know you are
Herman Boone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always going to be for you, Kyle Chandler from Friday Night Lights.
Yeah, but that's
the TV
TV
show.
He's a TV coach. But yeah, he's the greatest. I mean, that's the greatest. That is the greatest
That's
coach.
the greatest coach in the history of the
in
world.
the history of the world. he could coach me in my life right now, and I'd be happy.
Frank Grillo.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, Frank.
He's
Gavana.
very,
I mean,
very unorthodox.
I mean, yeah, obviously you give Kurt Russell and Miracle.
Yep.
You know.
You got to go Mickey, right? Classic Mickey.
Classic, yeah. Great coach. He's a great coach. I think those have to be some of the Mount Rushmore coaches. I mean, I love Stallone and Creed. I think he's fucking phenomenal.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a really good one because you almost forget about it, right? Al Pacino
Yeah.
in Any Given Sunday.
I mean, he gives a great speech.
I started turning. Yeah, he actually is a very good speech.
Yeah.
Some days.
Yeah.
I look myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
He's an alcoholic in that too, right?
I can't remember if he drinks, if he was or is.
Yeah. All right, so guys, Josh and Ferris, thank you so much for the questions. Great questions. You guys can always go and submit your questions on Instagram. Richard Eric Jarvie holds competitions every week for the movies that we are covering.
Yeah, so I don't think we need to really acknowledge this is obviously a totally legitimate movie. I don't think it really fits into the categories there. We don't necessarily know the movie we're doing next week, but let's do it anyway. It's called The Pitch.
Wow. So we're both going to go see A Quiet Place 2 next Monday.
Yeah.
And then we realized we didn't cover the first one, and then you reminded me it was because I actually remember the call now. I was like, I called you and we were going to cover it, and I was like, it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
I don't know if A Quiet Place 2 will. It feels much more like it'll just kind of be an action movie set in the same world.
Yeah.
So if it's good enough, then we'll cover maybe both of them in a row, but I'm not sure.
I love both movies, but we actually have a bunch of cool stuff to talk to you guys about coming up very soon. And the best place to go find out about that stuff is to go check out our YouTube, which is youtube.com/actionindustries. We have a very special thing we're doing on our Patreon called the Captain's Cabana, which is Drew and I are going to be doing an hour-long private chat with just people at the Captain tier and above on Patreon. It's tomorrow night, Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will read the entire chat, not just the super chats, but literally the whole chat. So if you guys are at that level, get excited. We're going to be wearing these dumb 10-gallon hats.
Yeah, the 10-gallon hats are sweet. Ben put up a review of one of a movie yesterday in that hat, and we got a $5 super chat here from Ferris Muthana, who just says, clear eyes, full hearts.
Can't lose. Love it, Ferris. Big salute to General Muthana, and also a big shout to Maddie Gunner, who just upgraded to the general level on our Patreon this morning. So big shout out to you, Maddie.
And while we're at that, I might as well just go through all the other generals we have. We got Will McLean, Sadi Lamanmaki, Patrick Gibson, Pat Bulfamonte, Michael Deacon. Also, big salute to you, Pat, for joining up this last week. Michael Deacon and Bethany, of course. Maddie Gunner, Luke M. Haynes, Liam Gilpin, Larry and Lindsay Payne, Kelsey Kirkland, Carl Newell, John Patterson, Jeremiah Morris, Glenn Caesar, Ferris Muthana, Eric Rentz, Danny Joyce, Brandon Buckingham, Andrew Hayes, Anthony Nugent, and AJ Lancaster. Those are all of our generals, so big salute to you guys.
Then we also have the 5-star generals.
Yep.
Steven Anderson, Paul Denuzio, Oscar Romo, Mac Ryan, John Getz, Jake Iacovetta, Cody Seal, and of course, the Commanders-in-Chief, Alex and Lucas Shashek.
Big salute to you guys.
Salute to everybody here. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week on Action Movie Anatomy.
Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.